I wanted us just to give a little bit of thought to something that I think has, in one way or another, been on most of our hearts and minds in different ways. And that is, how is it that we move forward into not only a new year, but maybe even more importantly, into a new time in our lives when so much has changed, when so much has been upended, when we've experienced and have gone through something that has been life-changing and that we've not, known before, that has produced a lot of different emotions and feelings and anxieties. And so, what I really thought would be helpful is to hear from each other some of what our experiences have been and some of what we have felt and are still feeling. But just to kind of frame that within the context of some things that I wanted to share with you. I don't even know where I saw this, but when I saw it, I thought, well, maybe we could, all of us in some way could relate to this. How was your life? And this was obviously written just recently. How was your life in early January? Yes, it was cold. My required COVID mask made my breath vent up to my forehead and the moisture froze to my hair. It gets ridiculous, and we've been warned by the medical authorities that we will all be infected with the Omicron variant of COVID. We just don't know when that will happen. Where I live, we are no longer told that vaccines will prevent COVID. The new motivator is that vaccines may reduce the severity of symptoms when we do get sick, and we will get sick. The goalposts are shifting. I could rant. So I don't know you all, but I think in one way or another, all of us have experienced some parts of that emotion. We've all, I think, ranted. We've all been frustrated. We've all felt some sense of when is this going to end? Is this going to end? What will it be like when it does finally end, et cetera, et cetera. So again, I don't even know where I saw this, but when I saw it, I thought, well, I felt like I could relate to it anyway. So one of the things that we know has happened to people everywhere, but specifically in some cases, what some studies are showing among Christian people, among people like you and me, people who say that we have faith, that we have hope, and that we're grounded in the love of God and in the love of Jesus, that Kelly did such a really nice job preaching about this morning, is we're experiencing some things like this: a loss of hope, hope fatigue. You kind of just keep going out there and going out there and going out there, emotionally and spiritually with some sense of hope, but we've just kind of gotten tired. We get to a certain place, and then all of a sudden, bam, we get hit with a variant. We get hit with this. And as we also know, whatever's going on in the pandemic is influenced by other life events, other world events. You've got Russia on the edge of maybe going into the Ukraine. You have economic things that happen. You have all of life that happens in the context that already happens is now happening in the context of this pandemic. That what difference does prayer make? We know who are saying, I don't know, that it's kind of that age-old theological question, where's God, and I'm throwing up all these prayers. I hope that we've been praying that this is going to go away. People won't continue to suffer and die. We won't be impacted. Not happening. And also some people are saying, hey, my faith, what I've built my faith on, that bedrock, I no longer find it to be the same source of comfort that I used to. I don't come to church, or I don't come into community with other people of faith, and find that my faith is what helps me anymore. So those are some of the things that, again, Christian people of all stripes, shapes, and sizes are saying that they have experienced and are experiencing. Bill Wilson is a friend of mine who is the founder of this entity called the Center for Healthy Churches, and at some point I'll be introducing him to us here. But Bill has spends a lot of time in different churches, and I think this was maybe last year. This was fairly early on when he made this comment that we need to prepare to change the way that we do church, because COVID-19 is going to change it more than anything in our lifetime, more than anything. And again, I think some of this obviously has now begun to influence this. And then what he pointed out, again, about at least a year or so ago, is actually what we're beginning to see. And I think that also impacts in how we think about moving forward. Before I go on, any reactions to any of this? And does this resonate with you in any way? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to build on what Kelly said this morning about love. You probably don't know it, but I'm one of the shepherds in St. Peter's Cares. And I have to tell you, and I've said this to David before, I know personally that there is not a soul in this church who would not help do anything for another member of this church. I've experienced it. I know it. I don't know that we know it as a group. It's just a thought I had.
Great, thank you.
I just don't think I'm signing up for that.
Good.
I don't have a loss of hope.
Uh-huh.
And do I have fatigue? Sure, I got lots of fatigue. I can share some with you. But I don't think prayer is futile. And I think my faith gets stronger all the time. And the bottom line is this, is that I feel this, and I think most people, if they think about it, do. Certainly, probably many of the people in this room. I have much for which I am very grateful in this life. And so, my prayers and thoughts are basically ones of thanksgiving more than anything else. I mean, hell, I'm glad I don't have COVID today. I'm thankful for that, Well, it's early in the day. But, I'm thankful that the sun is shining. Mm-hmm. I'm just thankful for the day. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think if you get lost in all the, hair on fire stuff that you see on the news and that sort of thing, you can easily go down that rabbit hole of a loss of hope, and I just try not to do that. Mm-hmm. And I think if we look at what we're all the various blessings that we have, and we're thankful for them, it's not such a hopeless place.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. So some of this is pretty dramatic if you think about it, isn't it? Because it to your point, Rich, you look at some of this, and I think some of us can resonate with it, and some of us are like, well, I'm not there. But again, that's the reality is that we know that there, for all those like you, there are also those others who are saying, man, it's just not there for me. A few other things that just kind of talk about and reflect on where things are in not only in the church, but with some projections. And you'll see this was David Kinnaman is the president of a group called the Barna Group, who does a lot of research and studies on the church and on trends in society and the church. And as you can see now, back in 2020, he made this comment that about how many people he thought we were going to continue to see who were going to lose their sense of what it meant to be connected, in the usual ways with what we typically had come to expect and experience in the church. And so I think that some of what he saw 2 years ago, we're now seeing. conversations, we've been talking about what our shared need to try to help get people reconnected and re-engaged in some way with the church and with their sense of being part of community. And then this comment about how going forward the church is going to have to spend more time thinking about strength, the strengths that come out not necessarily of just bodies in pews, but what's the real underlying strength because of some of this, this difference and this loss of connectedness. Some of it, quite frankly, there's a lot of concern and a lot of talk about how some of that just may not come back. And I think we're seeing that mirrored in other parts of society where you hear about people, who no longer want to go into an office, and people who are losing employees going somewhere else when this employee says, I need you to come and have a physical presence again, and they say, I don't want to do that, but I can go over here, and I don't have to be connected in that same way. So I think those are going to that continues to influence society and our culture as a whole, but also it's going to continue to impact the church. And so some of these things are part of what we're having to think about. But I think it also influences again how it is that we go forward. Thoughts?
It seems to me that maybe the underlying problem is people's spirituality, because I would have thought by now that a lot more people would have been coming back to church. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's what we need to address, is that when you work and you work remotely, that works well for some people. But for a church, I think you need the connectedness of being with other people and being here and experiencing the community that St. Peter's does so well. I don't know how to address that, but I think it's easy for people to say, no, I'm just going to stay at home. I'm not coming back to church and, until this is all over. But there must be some way that we can start pulling those people back in, because I'm sure they miss it.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Maybe we should focus on gratitude, not so much the negativity that's around us every day, to refocus on gratitude and what we really do have. Mm-hmm. So much to be grateful for. Mm-hmm.
The problem with all of these things that are listed up there is that in any situation that is negative or that's filled with anxiety, there's as many doomsayers as there are faithsayers. They all have evidences to support their causes. The problem is that doomsayers generally are the what if, the faithsayers are now. This is now. What Rich said is absolutely correct. To understand the blessings that we have, and that this has all happened before, and we've come through it before. Consider Paul in Rome. His faith stayed with him right up to the moment when he was executed. Now, we don't face execution, so it should be easier for us to maintain our faith. But I think also the attendance issue in church has more to do not so much with church, but people are just avoiding large groups. And I really think that somehow has to be addressed. And, we've tried restaurants, say, well, everything is sanitized and all that. I think what we need to do is to assure people and to reassure people that by coming to church, they're not going to be exposed to some nameless horror. And I'm not sure how to do that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great, thank you. Before we move on, I want to push just a little bit on Rich, something you're bringing up, and I think that part of what we part of what we were needing to think about even before this pandemic, but I think that what we're being pushed to have to look at even more closely now is this whole concept of spiritual muscle as opposed to physical mass. We still put so much emphasis on how many people show up for certain things, and how we're driven by that as clergy of the church. Unfortunately, and Kelly can tell you because she's just been working on some things for it recently. Jacqueline can tell you in terms of our annual report is that we in the church are still driven by numbers, and that's so out of step with what was going on even pre-pandemic. To talk about, to report on average Sunday attendance and numbers of services and all of these different things, you have to keep those data. Those metrics are important, but they can't be the sole focus. So what I'm hopeful is that we can work on thinking, I don't know what's going on with this morning. But that I hope that we can begin to shift our focus even more on what is it that we're doing of real substance that's bringing people together. Because I think what Kinnaman talks about is a sense of connected. Being connected is different than showing up on Sunday morning, Sunday evening, whatever. For this past week, where we really, there was a group of a very lively group of people that I felt a sense of connectedness. Louise and I were part of another one where I felt a real sense of connectedness, and is that fair to say, Louise? Isn't that right? Where people were engaged and wanted to talk about spiritual muscle a lot more than physical presence. So that's one of the things that I hope that we can in a way that we can move forward. So one of the images that that my daughter helped me come up with. I need to give her credit. She's not here for this service. She's in town this weekend. My daughter is the creative one in my life and helps me generate ideas and helps me put these presentations together. So when we were talking this week about what I wanted to try to help us talk about, she brought up a labyrinth and this theme of walking a labyrinth and moving forward together. So I was looking at some different things about labyrinths and about how you walk one. And here's just something that came up about how it is that much of life is pretty messy. And it's often challenging to think about, well, given the messiness, what's the direction? Where am I supposed to go? And this just resonated with me, not only thinking about a labyrinth, but thinking about what we've been living through. And then, this says, well, maybe that's one of the reasons why people choose to walk a labyrinth and why that is so appealing. Have any of you ever had the experience of walking a labyrinth? Okay. Well, if you haven't, at least maybe you've at least seen one or somewhat familiar with them. And if you're not, then this is one that was recently constructed at the Church of the Good Shepherd in Town and Country. Angela Mahan, who's on our staff here, her husband is the rector there, and someone gave some money to construct a labyrinth, and so. There was an invitation to come out on a Saturday afternoon and help with this. And Lisa, my wife, and I went out and spent, it wasn't very long because I thought we'd be out there for several hours. Well, it was really interesting all we did was just, everything had been laid out and we just took bricks and set them down. There was a large group of people and it just didn't take very long. So anyway, that's this is the labyrinth that's been constructed and put together out there. So it was a really interesting experience, and we did it in a meditative way. You took bricks and you laid them down. Nobody talked, and then when it was over, you were kind of done. And and then by this spring, it'll be grown in and be fully ready for use. This was offered as the labyrinth being a metaphor for how it is that we walk through life. How it is, again, the messiness of life with the twists and turns and slow and fast. And when you go walk one yourself, or when you see other people walking, sometimes, again, you'll see people who take their time. Now, the first time I walked one, I was like, okay, I just want to get from here to there and then back out. That's just my personality. But a lot of people find it very helpful to be able to take their time. And if you've walked one, if you've seen people walk one in some of our cathedrals, and Grace Cathedral in San Francisco and the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City, there are these wonderful labyrinths that are at the entrance to those cathedrals where people come and walk the labyrinths. Did Atlanta have one? Yeah. So many of our cathedrals, there are labyrinths indoor that invite people to come in as a way of, of helping them to think and to process. So as you can see, the winding nature of it and the path of it is I think a way for us to help think about what it means to be on this journey that we're on the journey of life that, again, as we know, and as we've really experienced, sometimes takes these unexpected twists and turns. But that hopefully leads us to be able to think through and think more clearly, about who we are and especially whose we are. And as I mentioned earlier, there's only one way in, there's only one way out. There's nothing you can do wrong in the labyrinth. You just follow the path that takes you to the center. And it's been pointed out that there are three distinct components of a labyrinth. There's the getting into it, there's the being in the center, and then there's the part of coming back out. So I want to hold up that I think we've walked the labyrinth. We're in the center, and now we have to think about, well, what will it be like to come out? What is it going to be like to make that journey out from where we've been? All right, I'm going to stop again and see if you have reaction thoughts.
I think that it's clear that it'll feel different than phase one, than before going in. I think this experience, the pandemic, has changed all or most of us in ways that we don't fully understand. Mm-hmm. In every aspect of our lives, interactions with friends and family and our workplaces, and certainly in our church. Mm-hmm. And we just don't know what as you said, we don't know what it'll feel like when we come out. We know but I believe strongly it'll feel different. We won't soon forget this experience. We'll be concerned, and some of us will be concerned about potential risk of catching some kind of disease. We'll have a long time of not having been together in ways that we used to take for granted. It's really difficult to predict, but it'll certainly feel different.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you.
Isn't this just what we're going through, another challenge to our faith? Faith is, to me, the foundation of life. Uh-huh. Here you go. My public speaking is showing its deficiencies. No, faith of if you get faith, you don't know what's coming your way. So this is when it's challenged the most, and this is what you really need to become aware of that, and this is all part of it. And so you don't know how you're going to come out. Theoretically, you're going to come out stronger, hopefully. Mm-hmm. And that's it. That's all I got. Okay.
I keep having this very deep personal memory crop up, and to me, it's connecting to what I'm hearing. My dad died when I was 9, and as hard as that was when I was 10, a year later, I'd been holding on to this picture of heaven, that heaven looked exactly like the street where I grew up, and that heaven would bring me back to what life was like before my dad died. And so at age 10, that shattered for me. We still went to church. I went through confirmation. And I got to the point of confirmation and I still didn't have my faith back. But what I claimed was that I was still part of community. And that even if I was struggling, that the only path I could see forward was to still stay as part of community. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I offer in thinking about a labyrinth.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. So one of the things that has come up in each of the conversations that I've been having with small groups recently in what we were calling meaningful conversations. One of the things that has come up consistently in every setting has been that sense of connectedness, of people saying, we want to be connected. But the other side of that has been people enjoying so much being together in those types of settings because they felt a sense of connectedness. And there's been just a lot of energy and feelings of, wow, this is what in some way we feel like we've not been able to have for some period of time. So I find that to be, encouraging, again, because of this need, I think, for us to feel that deep sense of what it means to be connected. So what I want to offer to you, finally, and then I hope you'll have some other things to say, is that we all know that there's going to continue to be things that happen, again, that make life messy, difficult, tough circumstances, tragedy, you name it. But that at the end of every day, as it is at the beginning of every day, the one thing that we have that we can count on is the hope and the love of God. As Kelly said really well in her sermon today, that's that thing that sometimes we tend to trivialize in some ways because we've all heard it and read it at so many weddings and in so many other places where you just kind of, okay, well, here it is again. What about, love really is the root. It really is that which forms the basis and the foundation for what we know and say that we experience of God through the gift of Jesus Christ. So I want to hold that up to you. And then I also want to hold up something else that I think sometimes tends to get trivialized because we hear it and we use it so much in a completely different setting at the time of death and at funerals. When I have never really calculated this, but I bet 90-something% of families that I've worked with want to include the 23rd Psalm at a funeral. That's just what we find comfort in that. But I really want to hold this up to you as a way, I think, of us thinking about, again, what it is that matters and makes a difference. That God is that which leads us and guides us. With God, there's nothing else that we need. God is with us. I lie down in green pastures. I'm led beside the still, quiet waters. God is the one who refreshes us. God guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. And even though, and especially when we walk through those darkest of times and most difficult of times, I will not be afraid. I will not be afraid because God is with us. God comforts us. God's presence is eternal and abiding. So that's what I got for you. Other thoughts, feelings, things you've experienced during this time, your thoughts about how we move forward.
So our healthcare professionals have been like angels in our connections in society, and I just hope that on the whole 5 to 10% of the population can remember. Our percentage of the population looks at the healthcare professionals that slog through this every day, and they help people. So why can't the rest of society help people? They're there in the trenches, sometimes alone, helping.
Great, thank you.
And that's a Christian thing to do.
It is. Well, thank you for being part of this. Thank you for engaging, and see you soon. God bless you.